Usually, when I finish an episode of House of the Dragon, I try to figure out what it was really about, like a central theme, so to speak. But I didn't feel like episode 6 had that. But I'm not saying that I thought it was bad. I'll be honest, I actually liked a lot of the individual scenes in this episode, but it felt less like one complete episode and more like several storylines trying to use the same hour, if that makes sense. So I'll be doing something different this week. I'll be walking through the episode in order with you guys and giving my honest reaction and review and pointing out some of the book changes that I feel matter here. So obviously, since I will be doing a book comparison, there will be spoilers. So this is your warning. If you don't want anything spoiled for you in the Fire and Blood book or future episodes of House of the Dragon, please feel free to click away. But other than that, let's get started. We open with Criston and his men, or whatever's left of them, walking into the butcher's ball, and we also do see the fake corpses trap, and I thought that trap was kind of cool, I'm not gonna lie, of that battle. And we see them obviously survive the first trap, and then the real Black Army surrounds them. And I gotta say, I was very surprised by how quickly the show like did this whole sequence, not just by like killing Kristen, but just this whole sequence in general. And it being at the beginning of the episode as well, was really interesting because come by the end of the episode, I almost forgot it happened, to be honest. But maybe that was the intention behind it. And then we get Criston offering himself in single combat, which I feel is perfectly in character for him. Even at the end, he still wants to turn his death into one final performance of honor, I feel. However, Black Ally simply refuses to participate in that. So she shoots him again, and puts the last arrow through his face. And I thought that was just satisfying. And it was just very exciting to see Black Ally. I just wish the showrunners would give her like more time and introduce the character to the audience, because I feel like if somebody is not a book reader, they wouldn't know exactly who Black Ally is and not much about her. So I wish we got introduced to her character a little bit more. Because I'll be honest, I loved finally seeing her get a major moment like this, but unfortunately, this show almost immediately diffuses that because of the fundamental it lacks. Because if you think about it, we never get to actually be properly introduced to her character. We never get any dialogue. We just get a couple of shots of her here and there, but we never get to know her as a character. And I think that was very unfortunate. It takes away from her, landing the killing blow on Chris, and it takes away from that moment. So it just becomes empty. And that really bugged me. And I thought that was just very unfortunate. Her introduction in the series is very wacky, I feel. However, what I feel like annoyed me the most in this battle is the line from the book that is missing, the famous line where Longleaf, whom doesn't exist in the series, I guess, refuses Kristen's challenge and tells him, "I'll have no songs about how brave you died, Kingmaker." And I always loved that line, but the show preserves the humiliating death, but so removes the line that explains why Kristen does not deserve a heroic ending. But I don't know, maybe foolish old me being naive and expecting the line to be there, because I mean, it was just iconic. But again, maybe that is intentional. He dies in the opening minutes, and the episode moves on as if he was just another body in the war he helped create, which, again, like I said, by the end of the episode, I almost forgot that he just died at the beginning of it. So, but still, I wanted that final verbal humiliation. We then move to King's Landing, where the council is dealing with the murdered gold cloaks. We also see that Daemon is wanting to solve the problem with Dragonfire. Shocker, no. Honestly, that's his answer to almost everything. We also see that Rhaenyra understands that burning Tumbleton would probably and most likely make Ormond's propaganda even more effective. So she chooses assassins instead. And then we see the Baratheon delegation arrive, and without Boros, which pisses Rhaenyra off, and she kind of goes off on the representative. But she takes his belt. We don't get to see the rest of the scene, but it just looks like petty royal theater, honestly, until we later realize that the belt is being used to disguise her assassins as Baratheon men. Nasty Baratheon men, might I add. And I kind of like that setup and payoff purely because it pissed off Ormond. And I honestly don't know if that was supposed to be like a comedic relief or the comedic relief of the episode, but it cracked me up. And I just found that to be very, very funny. Like Ormond's reaction to them just being dirty and him not being able to withstand the sight of blood as well. I just couldn't stop laughing, to be honest. We then briefly check on Hugh and Ulf watching over Tumbleton. We do also see that Ulf is already bored because apparently owning a dragon is only exciting when other people are watching. Which, funny enough, I did cover this in one of my previous videos, the cost of recognition, which dives deeper into this idea and why there's this conflict in resentment building inside of Ulf towards the system per se. Hugh, on the other hand, is quieter, but both men are obviously beginning to realize that becoming dragon riders did not automatically make them respected, wealthy, or free. And the show is clearly laying groundwork for future resentment to start building. And then we get to this part of the episode, everybody, once again. And I'll be honest, it's very conflicting and also confusing because with these scenes or dialogues, when I'm watching these, it just feels to me that House of the Dragon has a problem with progressing the plot through dialogue as opposed to action. Because why has Rhaenyra and Alicent been having the same conversation for 6 episodes? Like, am I being delusional? Am I imagining this? Because it truly feels like every time we're getting these dialogues between Rhaenyra and Alicent, especially, it just feels redundant and very repetitive, and we're just reiterating the same thing over and over again. And I just can't see any benefit or goal or purpose to it, especially to the plot. It adds nothing and it takes away nothing. But yeah, I'm just getting very frustrated with it, and I just find it to be annoying at this point. We didn't get to see Daemon try to keep the gold cloaks from resigning, but unfortunately, intimidation cannot fix unpaid wages or stop men from being murdered. So I don't know. I understand the point, but by now we also do understand that Daemon can command violence, but he obviously can't maintain an institution. We then move on to Alan, who asks Corlys for more men, and I feel underneath that request for something more personal. And I mean, yeah, sure, Corlys has acknowledged that Alan is his son, but I feel like he still keeps him emotionally and publicly at a distance. I don't know, but I mean, I like the scene. I just wish that the episode had given it more room. But again, I can say the same thing about most of the scenes in this episode, unfortunately. We then get to Aegon, Larys, and Thailand planning their grand escape finally. And I don't know, I just feel like this season, this show has just been showing us Aegon just so we don't forget about him. And I find that to be funny and absurd at the same time, considering he's one of the main protagonists of the Civil War. And, we get more scenes with Rhaenyra and Alicent that we already established are the same thing for the past 6 episodes, and we barely get any of him. So I don't know, but I mean, in the book right now, his journey is undocumented. We don't know much about him until his major reveal later on. So I don't know. I guess we have to wait and see where this goes. But one thing I did enjoy about this scene is when he asked Thailand whether he thinks he's a terrible person or not, and somehow Thailand manages to answer the question without really answering it and dodging it perfectly. And I just thought his answer was very funny, and Aegon's reaction to it with pure disappointment. We then move on to Harrenhal, where Alice continues convincing Aemond that losing Vhagar might actually be protection rather than rejection. And I kind of like the way she phrased it. I still can't tell whether she genuinely cares about him or is manipulating him, or whether those things have merged together. But the Harrenhal scenes now feel like a different genre, obviously. King's Landing is political collapse, Tumbleton is military dysfunction, and Harrenhal now feels like a gothic romance between a witch and a traumatized prince. Next up is Rhaena in the Vale for about 3 minutes, and we see that Lady Jane Eyre is furious that she exposed herself. And I love Jane, don't get me wrong. And I don't think she's completely wrong here. I mean, Rhaena gained a dragon, but she also abandoned the children she was protecting and allowed everyone to believe she was dead. And she's a whole mess. But I just can't wrap my head around the fact or the idea of a lady striking a Targaryen princess who has a dragon the size of 6 buildings parked outside your castle. I mean, I thought that was very stupid. And seeing Lady Jane be physically abusive towards Rhaena was also very disheartening because I feel like Lady Jane's character is very similar to Rhaena in terms of goals, aspirations, and like how they are perceived by society. So I just thought that to be sad. But I don't know. The whole Vale storyline, I think, needs more than one brief check-in every now and then. Again, it's just because at this point it just feels like we're being shown this so we don't forget that this thing exists currently. We then move on to whatever this is. I mean, what the hell? Like, obviously, I'm not too shocked because they marry after the war in the book. So the show is building that relationship earlier, but it's just, it doesn't make sense right now. And it feels very rushed because I feel like we needed more scenes between them for it to feel like it was earned. So, yeah, I mean, I have nothing else to add or take from this, or it's just I thought this whole scene was very stupid and not meaningful whatsoever. I'm sorry. We then go back to Tumbleton, where Gwaine finally arrives and immediately asks a question that I think we're all asking ourselves, which is where is all this supposed support that is coming? And I mean, Ormond is surrounded by evidence, obviously, that the Green campaign is collapsing. Aemond is missing, Vhagar has not arrived, Rhaenyra has more dragons, and the great houses are not, in fact, rushing to Daemon. And Ormond still talks like victory is delayed by traffic, and it's just. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure he's a genius and a mastermind, but lately he's just been delusional. I mean, the amount of delusion he's engulfed himself in is just astonishing. But it's also hilarious as well. But in this scene, this is where honestly Tumbleton becomes finally interesting to me. Not because of the military plans or whatever, but because of Daron. Because when Daron is alone with Gwaine, he admits that his behavior around Ormond is a survival strategy and that he feels like a puppet and a child. And he lets Ormond call him king because challenging him has never felt safe. And this has completely changed how I read Daron's ambition, and we get to see this side of him that we never got to see before, and it was very refreshing and it was very nice. But it definitely looks like in private he looks trapped inside Ormond's fantasy and delusion. And then we see him ask Gwaine whether he saw Allison in King's Landing, and that kind of made me tear up a bit, not gonna lie, because everyone around him is discussing like crowns, armies, wars, and destiny. And I feel like Darren's just wrapped up in all of that, and he just wants to know whether his mother remembers him. And I just feel that was a very heartfelt moment, and that was probably my favorite scene in Tumbleton so far. Helaena realizes that Alicent's escape plan never included Jaehaera, and that Alicent was planning to save Helaena and leave her daughter behind. And I just thought that that was incredibly selfish, to be honest, of Alicent. I mean, Helaena has lost so much already. Her son was murdered in front of her. She was being asked to abort the one she's pregnant with, and now to leave Jaehaera, her daughter, behind. I just think it's incredibly unfair and so selfish of Alicent of trying or having just the audacity to try to suggest that. It's just very unfair and it's just very sad as well. But again, I understand that Alicent loves Helena, but I feel like her love is constantly mixed with guilt and control. She decides what safety should look like and then hides the cost and then expects Helena to understand that the deception that came from it was coming from love. And Helena is refusing to eat, and the signs of her impending doom are becoming very difficult to ignore. I mean, in the book, we know that after Jaehaerys dies, she withdraws from the world, stops eating, and deteriorates until her eventual death. And yes, the show has changed the circumstances, but it's still rebuilding the same emotional collapse, but instead through confinement, grief, prophecy, pregnancy, and even isolation. And it just feels that every adult around Helena claims to be protecting her while making her world smaller in a way. Back at Harrenhal, a boy recognizes Aemond, and Alice kills him almost immediately. Then she reveals 5 dragon eggs hidden beneath Harrenhal and offers Aemond a future where they rule together and produce a new Targaryen line. Now, the eggs are obviously a show invention, even though the Dreamfire and Rhaena history gives the idea some foundation. But that was interesting to say the least. And then we see Alice kiss him, and I honestly still don't know whether I'm watching romance, manipulation, prophecy, or all three. We then cut back to Rhaenyra at King's Landing, where she hears petitions from the small folk again, and they're talking about missing women, rising prices, and the disappearance of gold cloaks. And her answers may be politically true, but they do not help the people standing in front of her. And then we see that the Iron Throne cuts her, and the symbolism is so direct that the throne might as well look into the camera and review her reign itself. Still, I feel like Emma Darcy still sells the exhaustion so well. And Rhaenyra does not look cartoonishly evil in a sense. She looks overwhelmed and increasingly unable to distinguish criticism from attack. Then we go back to the city to possibly the worst disguise I've ever seen. I mean, genuinely, how did this guy fall for that? I mean, look at this. Gee, I wonder who's under that helmet. So yeah, I guess, we just track down one of Ormond's killers, but the man tells him that there are too many to count. So, and I feel like that's the actual problem is that Daemon can kill one assassin, but he can't kill the anger, poverty, and fear that keeps producing replacements. And if that wasn't bad enough, immediately afterward, he finds Ulf disobeying orders and responds by beating him. Ulf is irresponsible, I'll admit, but Daemon keeps confusing fear with loyalty. Rhaenyra's greatest military advantage depends on those dragon riders who already now feel used, and Daemon is giving them even more reasons to resent her. Then we get to the funniest part of the episode. We get to see the fake Baratheons arrived, covered in shit and smelling so bad. And Ormond desperately obviously wants to believe that this is proof that the great houses are finally joining him. You can see how prideful he is when he accepts them. But he can barely focus because it looks like their smell is just attacking him personally. But then we do see that Gwaine realize that they are imposters because he knows what the real Aryan Baratheon looks like. So I guess the Greens survive another day because Gwaine once paid very close attention to a handsome Baratheon. But the room becomes a bloodbath. Gwaine saves them, and once the danger is over, you can see that Ormond delivers a threat to Rhaenyra, and then he looks at the bodies and just throws them all over the table. I mean, I can't go through the scene again without laughing. I loved it, honestly. But if I'm being honest, to me at least, it feels that Ormond is like trying to project a cold authority kind of persona. Think like Tywin Lannister. But his body refuses to support the performance, obviously, as we see. But more importantly, I feel Daemon finally sees the man who has controlled him looking completely helpless. And then we get to one of the final scenes of the episode where we get to see Alicent finally tell Rhaenyra that Aemond is hiding at Harrenhal without Vhagar. So, in exchange for freedom for herself and Helaena, she effectively offers up her son. And then Rhaenyra makes the bargain even harsher, which I honestly didn't see coming. I just didn't expect that whatsoever. Because Alicent now can't simply provide the location, and she has to approach Aemond herself and help create the opportunity to kill him and kill him herself. I don't know. I just feel like this is a bad idea. Again, I don't know how to feel about it so far, but we'll have to see how this plays out once Allison makes it to Harrenhal. As for the goodbye between Allison and Helena, I will be honest, this was very enjoyable to watch. We see Helena ask Allison why she married her to Aegon, and Allison admits that she thought keeping her close was safer than sending her away. In that answer, I feel captures Allison's tragedy. She tried to protect Helena using the rules of the same system that harmed both of them. So her protection ended up becoming another form of damage. And we see that Helena finally eats again because Allison can't leave without seeing proof that she will survive. And even then, Helena is taking care of her mother by performing wellness in a sense. Alicent also promises that they will walk outside together in the sun when she returns. In this show, a promise that specific feels less reassuring than threatening, I feel. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Like I said, this was probably my least favorite episode of the season so far, but I don't think it was terrible. I just don't think it was good either. I mean, I just feel like there was great potential for some of the material in this episode, but I feel like my biggest problem in this episode was space. A lot of characters felt like in this episode received material that could have been excellent with more room, but instead I felt like the episode kept leaving scenes just as they become interesting. And I know Tumbleton is still important, and I understand that. I'm just simply ready for the story to stop telling me something is about to happen there and actually allow something to happen there. But I want to know what you guys thought. Did the episode work better for you? Did you enjoy it? Let me know in the comments down below. And that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing. I plan on covering every episode this season, and I'd love to have you along for the ride. And feel free to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. But thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.